This is Lake Powell. In July of 2026, it stood at 24% of capacity. Downstream, Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in America, 27%. Federal projections that same month said it could end the year lower than it has ever been. Nearly 40 million people drink from this river. 7 states, 30 tribal nations, 2 countries. The rules that divide its water expire at the end of this year. And the states have already missed 2 deadlines for agreeing on new ones. And for most of the last 60 years, the Colorado has been used up completely before it reaches the sea. Here's the number. Almost nobody says out loud. About 1/3 of everything this river gives up goes to growing feed for cattle. The river's biggest single user isn't a city, it's a crop. If that sounds unfixable, America has been here before. 90 years ago, in the hills of Wisconsin, this country ran its first experiment in saving a watershed. The land was already dying when they started. This is the Coon Creek Watershed, 90,000 acres of steep ridges and narrow valleys in Wisconsin's Driftless country, draining to the Mississippi. When settlers arrived in the 1850s, the streams here ran, in the words of one witness, clear, deep, narrow, and full. Farmers stacked hay on the creek banks because the creeks never flooded. Aldo Leopold would later call that a procedure now quite unthinkable. Then they plowed the hills the way they'd plowed flat country, in straight rows up and over the slopes. Rain found the furrows. The furrows became gullies. The gullies took the hillsides apart. Within 2 generations, the soil of the uplands was moving into the valleys, bearing fields, roads, and fences. Scientists would later calculate that half of everything that eroded in this watershed simply piled up on the valley floors. The creeks that never flooded now flooded every spring. In 1933, in the depth of the Depression, a soil scientist named Hugh Hammond Bennett became director of a brand new federal agency, the Soil Erosion Service. Bennett believed the only way to convince a skeptical farmer was to show him on land like his own. He needed one watershed to prove it. Aldo Leopold, then at the University of Wisconsin, helped persuade him. Make it Coon Valley. Project number 1. The deal offered to every farmer in the valley was written down, and it's disarmingly simple. In Leopold's words, we will furnish you free labor, wire, seed, lime, and planting stock if you will help us reorganize your cropping system. You are to give the new system a 5-year trial. By 1935, 315 farmers, nearly half the valley, had signed. Eventually, more than 400. What they did sounds almost too simple. Plow along the curve of the hill instead of over it. Alternate strips of corn with strips of hay. Retire the steepest slopes entirely. Civilian conservation. Corps crews strung fence along the 40% gradient line, and above it, planted pine. Repair the gullies. Rest the woodlots. Farm with the shape of the land instead of against it. It did not go smoothly. The drought of 34 killed a large share of the first plantings. They planted the wrong willows on the stream banks. Some farmers plowed straight through their brand new terraces. The experiment nearly buried itself in its first 2 years. The farmer stayed anyway. Here's what makes Coon Valley different from a feel-good story. Somebody measured it. For decades, a geographer named Stanley Trimble kept a sediment budget for this watershed, published in the journal Science twice. By 1975, erosion on the uplands had fallen to a quarter of the 1934 rate. Sediment collecting in the valleys fell to a few percent of what it had been. The burying of the valley floors essentially stopped. The trout came back. Today, the Driftless region's spring creeks support a fishing economy that one industry commission study put it over $1.5 billion a year. The valley that taught America soil conservation now exports two things: food and proof. But the ledger has a hard line in it. The sediment that left the basin each year barely changed for decades, because the legacy of the disaster, all that soil banked in the valley floors, kept washing out downstream. And in August 2018, 14 inches of rain fell here in a single day. 3 of the project's own flood control dams breached. 90 years of healing. And the watershed is still living with its first 40. Now, while the storms get bigger, watersheds forgive, but they forgive slowly. Brings us back to this river. The Colorado's crisis is not Coon Valley's. You can't contour plow your way out of a compact that promised more water than the river carries, in the driest stretch this region has seen in 1,200 years. Anyone who tells you soil health alone fixes the Colorado is selling something. The only farming change anyone has actually sized against the shortfall isn't glamorous. A 2025 study estimated that simply easing off alfalfa irrigation in the hottest weeks of summer could save 1 to 3 million acre-feet a year, and roughly the size of the river's annual overdraft, if farmers across the basin did it. And what could living, healthy soil add on top of that? Here's the honest answer. Nobody has credibly measured it at this scale. That's not a reason to drop the question. That's the reason to ask it. But remember what Coon Valley actually proved. Not a technology, a decision. Several hundred ordinary farmers agreeing to farm with the land instead of against it, and a government willing to bet on showing rather than telling. The Colorado's biggest user is agriculture. Most of that grows feed. Every acre of it sits on soil that holds or loses water according to how it's farmed. So here's the question we actually want your answer to. 90 years ago, 315 farmers rebuilt a watershed with fences, pine trees, and a 5-year handshake. What would it take? What would you offer a farmer today to run that experiment at the scale of the Colorado? Tell us in the comments. We read all of them. If you want more stories about what land can do when people decide to heal it, that's this whole channel. Subscribe.